Yeah, we'll auto-tune that into the theme song for this. That'd
Get it going. All right, well, we chit-chatting about today.
So we are chit-chatting a little bit of a continuation from the last time you and I were together on an episode where we were talking about the move. It was just conversation based off of some comments that we had gotten, questions, that kind of stuff. Somebody had, in general, people have had some concerns, questions about like off-road capabilities, basically. And I mean, even with the builds, the integrity of our builds in general, people have questions about the rattling, about road noise, that kind of stuff. So in general, your take on what we do, things we do ahead of time to make sure that there's minimal road noise and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a two-parter. You have like off-road capabilities, which is like the chassis, suspension, drivetrain, all-wheel drive, tire size, what kind of tires, suspension, all those things that we do and offer packaged together. And then there's the second part of it where it's okay, great, I can take this van in all these locations because of what I did to the chassis underneath, but how's the inside hold up? And so like if you go back in different episodes, we talk about no wood and very, very minimal to a point of no screws. And it's kind of my goal that we get to a point where there are no screws anywhere in our build. Because the thing is about a screw, when you tighten something down with it, it's all about if you tighten a little too far, well, now you loosened it. Now you lost thread strength. With a bolt, it's basically you torque it down, and I mean, it's probably going to seize before it ever loosens. And so, it's how we approached our build. A couple things. One is we built with machining. We didn't build these vans with the idea that everything needs to be measured and like pilot hold and then like either nailed or screwed together. We went from the perspective of we want to be able to manufacture this from the idea of, machining. So set locations, measurements, it's the same kit every time. Like this box, this panel is made and those go in the same spot every single time. And so whenever we went down that path, it's a matter of we want copy repeat so that we know that we can get to a level of quality. Okay. Well, while we're going down that process, when we first started building, when I built the very first van, it was screws, wood, lots of screws, lots of wood, and even if I can make it tight, it'd probably still squeak, because it's going to shift, it's going to move. Wood does not like moisture. Moisture is going to make it contrast, expand. It's kind of like when you build a deck with pressure-treated lumber. You really want it to go out there, and you almost want to leave the pile of wood for a while because you want the moisture to come out to some degree. I'm building, still in the process of building a pavilion, Nick, in my backyard. He calls it every other name than what it really is, just to tick me off.
Well, isn't there like minuscule differences? Or
no, there's very specific differences, Haley.
Okay, we can.
For the record.
Never mind.
Yeah, wait. Okay, tangent. But I mean, with the lumber that I used, I sat out and it was an actual stream of water ran out of this pallet for almost a month. And what's crazy is the boards would start out, like if it was a 10-inch board, it's really 9.5 in actual. Well, that 9.5 would actually shrink down to almost 9 or 9.25, which, is that different. But whenever you're trying to tighten things down, it's difficult. Well, that's any lumber. Any lumber, it swells, it contrasts. And so we wanted to go along the approach of when we put it together, it's got to be able to not shift, not move. It's got to be able to be solid. Well, you can't use porous materials if that's what you want. Like I will say for the record, we've always struggled with ABS. ABS plastic is a very oil-based plastic that expands and contrasts. For people watching, like you probably have a do model. If you do, you'll notice that your platform on your fold-out beds will every once in a while start to get waves in it from heat, because in that heat, it's going to shift and move. You can lock it down, you can put more bolts, but at the end of the day, it's going to try to do what it wants to do in the heat or the cold. And so by counteracting that, we started going to HDPEs, we started going to other based plastics, and it's all, again, on quality. There's nothing wrong with the panel, but how it looks, is obviously a problem. So when we started looking at that road, it's like, okay, we want stuff that can be locked in and actually quality controlled before it leaves. And then have confidence that it's not going to change for you, the customer. And the main part of that is so that whenever a customer reaches out, say 6 months, year, 2 years later, and they say, hey, I don't know what's going on, but this panel rattles, or, something came loose, we can actually identify a problem. Quality checks and quality control, if what you're trying to do is always a huge variable, well, then there's always a problem. Kyle's flexing because I came in with a muscle shirt on today.
We need to just put window curtains on those windows.
It's all good. But
I guess you did it too. You did it.
I did it. They said no sleeve Fridays.
Oh, okay, great. It was overall Fridays. What happened to that?
It's hot, Haley.
You can get overall shorts.
Okay, fair. That's called a romper.
Right, that's what I'm wearing.
Yep. So, but it starts to come to a matter of if something does loosen, we want to be able to fix it. Mm-hmm. That's such a big part of the approach that we take with how things connect, how they go together, because, it's kind of like the hardware we use. It's a matter of if that thread goes out, we want to be able to replace the thread. And, whenever we kind of just realize that needs to be our approach, because, we don't want to be a conventional RV. We don't want doors rattling. We don't want doors falling off. But to the question that, I'm kind of kicking around and answering, in a much different ways, it starts to boil down to when we look at, customer satisfaction, customer wants to take a van off-road. We can do every QC check in the world and knock on stuff, hit stuff, thread lock bolts. There's always going to be that scenario where something's probably going to loosen. Yeah. But we want a customer to be able to do a maintenance check and be able to just simply tighten it back down. It's no different than your tires on your vehicle. Most people probably don't realize this or know this, but like you go to Discount Tire, get your tires put on. Every trip you take after that, I shouldn't say every trip. You need to run those tires for a few hundred miles and check every lug nut. Because yes, they torque them down, but if that wheel isn't setting just right, it can torque down and you're not going to get one more turn out of it. But when that vehicle hits the road and that rim has an ability to maybe shift a little, maybe it just loosened one of the lug nuts. And all it takes is one to start loosening, and then it loosens the next and the next and the next.
I don't think I've ever checked my lug nuts.
You're supposed to. So, I learned
lots of things about my car working here.
but it's an honest thing, because your thought is, well, they put them on, they tightened them.
Yeah, they did it.
Right.
So what do I need to?
It's the same approach that we take with how we build. It's a matter of, no, we do our QC check. We check them, even on delivery day. Ian even kind of comes in behind and he just hits stuff.
Yep. And that's his favorite test, the whack test. and that's the most needed test of it all. Because look, we can check everything, but hey, at the end of the day, hit it, go drive it, run it around, like make it move, make it shift. Because we build a system that has the ability of moving and shifting where we want it to. It's like relief points. If you go back to the old style bed lift system, we actually put a cotter pin in the crank handle so that if you actually are like trying to crank it up on something that starts to put too much pressure, or you're cranking it down and it starts to put too much pressure, you just break the pin instead of breaking the couple $1,000 system. You break $1 part instead of a $2,000 part. That's kind of the same concept of like how we build, and to keep the longevity there is, you can do a lot of things to this extrusion. You can do about anything to it and it's going to be fine, but it's having that ability of actually maintaining. So the way I look at it is
we build a product that all the way down to truly the nuts and the bolts can be maintained, can be tightened. We do a QC check on services when they come in, you know, and then some of that is just us going through with an Allen wrench, checking every bolt. That's all it is. And, you know, in time, like I'll say this, like our older kids used to have certain hardware, and that hardware indirectly allowed the loosening of things over time. So we changed the hardware because we don't want that to happen. And so, you know, we approach that off-road capability from the chassis side, from the idea that you're going to go run this van, you're going to go off-road, you're going to do these things, you're going to loosen things up, you're going to jiggle stuff, you're going to hit bumps where you're going to pop these batteries in and out, you know, you're going to jostle things. That's perfectly fine. Don't be surprised that if you do that a bunch, something doesn't loosen or shift. But it's okay because it can be retightened back down. Mm-hmm. And that's the number one thing like I would tell people with like how we build is, you know, it's like, well, you know, these things shouldn't loosen. I don't know if I agree or disagree, because I would say I would much rather something loosen
than break.
And that's the number one difference between how we approach things than I would say majority of like your custom style builders. Because I'll say for the record, you know, you can dovetail cabinets together, glue, nail, and they will not come apart. I mean, there are ways to do it. Mm-hmm. The problem is that you can have it as strong as you want, but if the wrong thing tweaks it or changes it at the wrong time, it's going to break, and then you truly have to fully replace. Mm-hmm. And instead of being able to just undo bolts to take it out, you're having to break it out. You're having to cut it out. And that's the part where we build a modular vehicle, but we also look at it and say, hey, I want this overhead to be modular in the sense of service. I want to be able to take this out of my way. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to pop this wall out. You know, I want to be able to remove this bar. And so, I mean, think of it like at your house. It sucks to put something in a wall when you've sheetrocked, because you just have to cut a hole in the sheetrock. You don't really have a choice. Mm-hmm. But if you could just pop panels, oh my gosh, like you would add stuff all day. And that's the number one thing is, if a person's wanting to go off-road and do these things, you know, I would say for the record, you know, our vans hold up extremely well in those environments because of how rigid we're able to make the build. That, and we put relief points where they need to be. Mm-hmm. But it's these, I will say, on these new Move models, like one of my biggest concerns when we started the whole process was, you know, we're attaching panels to the chassis, we're making changes, like all these different things. I've kind of got an overwhelming concern of, man, how is this going to feel or fit and finish like down the road, you know, 5 or 10,000 miles. But they are unbelievably strong. And I mean, it's crazy to me how, I call it tight. Like when you drive down the road and you can kind of hear like your lift bed, it's on hydraulic post. It is going to move. If you hit bumps, it will make noise. Yeah. It's on hydraulics. It physically moves. Okay. So you're never going to stop that. And so there's only so much you can make that's like what I would consider tight. There's natural sounds that are just going to happen no matter what we do. Because that's just how it's designed and that's how it works. These Move models, their tightness is unreal. Now, the other thing that's almost comical right now is we've been starting to be very successful with getting Move models out the door. We've done now, I don't know how many, with overhead doors. Mm-hmm. So for the longest time, we would never do doors on vans. And then the one complaint that I would say we're getting back right now is how do we make these doors quiet? And so it's like the one thing that we've held off on for so long, because that door is noise. It's the one reason that we've never approached it, because I'm like, they will make noise. And it's funny because now we're working on how to do the thing that has always been tough, is let's make these doors not make noise. Yeah. And so I don't know, it's almost like ironic. It's like we stay away from all these things for so long, but it's like, hey, we're going to give the people what they want. They want to conceal their stuff. Totally makes sense. But hey, you go off road and you don't lock the doors to where they can't move. Yeah, they are going to make noise. Good news is we bolt them together, and the way we put them together, the chances of them breaking, very low. But it's a moving part. Like it's still a moving part. It is a door. You know, it's made to move. It's made to hinge. It's made to do these things. So it's kind of like making you aware of, what's that called? You want to hide your stuff in your overheads. That's perfect. But you also have to understand too, you probably just added potentially some rattling and some noise to your build.
Yeah.
Like, what's that? Not settling. What's that called? I don't know.
I'm usually the word gal, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's like give and take.
Yeah.
It's like you want to hide your stuff. Okay, that's fine. You're going to have to be okay, though, with probably forgetting that those doors need to be locked when you go down the road and a little bit of rattling.
Yeah.
You got to be good with it. So
until you figure out how to make them quiet.
Until we figure out how to make them completely quiet. We've gotten them a lot better. Still not good enough for us, but we'll get there. So, but no, it's and we could do a whole nother episode on the topics of like what these vans can really do with suspension and you know the actual off-road capabilities. But I'd say from the upfit side, they're designed to be beat up. They're designed to be used. Yeah. And then they're designed to be maintained. Yeah. And that's the number one thing.
Yeah, something you mentioned about just like serviceability, and you know, it is just like we give everybody a set of T-handles, you know, and it's like pretty much everything you can adjust with those 3 T-handles. You know, you don't really need much else. That's like, would you say a majority of what we build is meant to not force people to have to come back to our shop? You know, we can call them and kind of give them instruction over the phone for like most things. Obviously, there are some things where like we should take care of it or like an RV shop should. But like just that simplicity is something where you can be like, okay, grab the 4, grab the 5 T-handle and like tighten this, loosen this, put this back or take it off or whatever. So I think that like just it being somewhat complicated, like it just looking at it, it seems complicated, but I feel like it's actually fairly simple when it comes to, hey, my panel popped out or like loosened or something, or like you said, the battery's like moved. Yep. What do I do to put it back? You know, that's definitely a really important aspect of it.
Yeah. The approach is the ability of just servicing in the field.
Yeah.
And so if something happens, you know, we might not be able to make it perfect out in the field, but we can definitely make it usable in the field. Yeah. And so it's kind of like you're never fully down, I guess you could call it. So, but sweet. Well, we can talk on this topic forever, but I know Austin said we're out of time.
Oh, well, darn.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll continue on this, and keep giving the people what they want.
Yeah, so comment, more questions, like, things you want to
know. Subscribe again, and then like again, and comment
like Austin said, hit all the buttons except for the dislike button.
Yes, hit them all minus the dislike. So, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.